So we are going to be using the chat today. Again, grab a pen and a paper if you have one. So the chat is going to be in the bottom center. So that's how we're going to communicate. We'll just keep ourselves muted in between time just so that there's not as much background noise. Okay, there's more. Hello, hello. Okay, so chat, just like yesterday. If you were here yesterday or watched yesterday's recording, type a one in the chat. If you are new to today, if this is your first time and you haven't watched the recording from yesterday, which is totally fine, type a two in the chat. Oh, there we go. I'm just getting my mic. That should be the right mic now. Okay. One, one. Okay. Totally fine if you're a two, too. I just want to know kind of where we're at. Two. Okay. Awesome. Hi, Kristen. Okay. Okay. Welcome, welcome. Again, just type in where you're tuning in from. We kind of talked about our kids' ages yesterday, but today just type in where you're tuning in from. And for those of you that didn't get to watch the replay yesterday, I will be sending out that again today if you didn't already get it. But there is a replay page. And so every day this week, I'll be posting it up there until the end of the week because we're going over a 5-day method. Every day we're doing a different one. It's shame, SHAME. It's actually unshame, but there's 5 letters in shame. So every day we're going to be learning one of the things of our method. Okay, Edmonton, South Woodsley, Ontario. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. Okay, who's excited for day 2? I'm excited for day 2. And thanks for those of you that are joining us for the first time today. Arizona, awesome. It's probably so nice and warm. It's not super warm here today. Okay. So 5 days to shame-free parenting. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about what shame-based parenting was and how it's popping up for us. We're going to talk a little bit about that again today. And we're also going to get into the H. So yesterday we did the S, and today we're going to do the H. For those of you that did the S, I'm going to have you describe in the chat a little bit about how that went for the people that didn't get to do it. So the S was to see your shame. So we talked a little bit about what shame feels like in the body. We actually did a little process where we tapped into our own bodies to figure out, like, what does it feel like for me? And then our exercise for yesterday was just tuning into when I'm feeling it, what does it feel like? And just noticing it, just calling it out, just being like, oh, that's what shame feels like for me. Oh, I'm feeling shame. Did anybody have any experiences of shame yesterday where they noticed it, where they were able to feel it at all, even once? Type a 1 in the chat if that was you. Melissa from Milwaukee. I remember that. M from M. Okay, gotta make sure my recording. Yeah, there we go. Yes, Charlene, awesome. Eliza, awesome. Yeah, I usually have an experience with shame every day, so it's pretty easy to like tap into. I definitely noticed it this morning. Awesome. Isn't it awesome that I'm saying like awesome, we all felt shame. So cool. But the reason why it is so cool is because we're learning how to recognize what it feels like in our body, and that is actually really cool. So good for you noticing what it feels like in your body. That's step 1. So today, we're going to talk about the H, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what shame-based parenting was and also what shame-free parenting is, and get clear on what we want shame-free parenting to be like for us, what we personally want to parent like, what we want that to look like. So again, we're going to do the little like tuning in intention, how I'm feeling thing. So close your eyes. If you're in a space where you can close your eyes, if you're driving or whatever and listening on the side, don't close your eyes. Okay. But everybody else, close your eyes. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same breath in through the nose, holding it for just a moment, exhaling slowly out through the mouth, exhaling twice as long. And we're going to kind of shake the body on that exhale. Okay. So just go at your own pace. You're breathing in, holding it for just a moment. And then on the exhale, you're going to shake the body. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhale, holding it for just a moment, exhaling, shaking the body. As you're doing that third one, I will mention that your nervous system, the nervous system that feels dysregulated when we're feeling those big emotions, is a physical system. And so it's really helpful to do physical things to get us into that state, to get us into more regulated state. Okay, so as we're just pause, calm, chill for a moment, I want you to tap in to how you're feeling. Maybe there is words that come to mind, a feeling word, maybe more than one. Maybe you'd use some words to describe the sensations in your body that you're feeling, the way that you feel. Maybe I just had this with a client yesterday. She was feeling happy, but as we tapped more in, she could also notice that there was a little bit of worry or sadness. And we don't have to question why it's there or where it's coming from, just notice. Now we're going to fast forward in our mind to the end of this session, the end of this week, having gained whatever it is that we want, why we came here, feeling into how we want to feel. If I waved a magic wand and you felt exactly how you wanted to feel, maybe full of knowledge, confidence, peace, no more self-doubt. Imagine what that would feel like in your body, like physically feel. And see if you can imagine spreading that up to your head, down your legs, over your arms. Take a few more slow, deep breaths, just settling into that feeling. And whenever you feel ready, whenever you feel complete, you can come back and open your eyes. I feel like I could stay in that space for the whole hour. It could be like, come to this workshop. Let's just sit and breathe for an hour. It feels so good. It's so grounding. Okay, so type in the chat. What emotions were you feeling when you tapped in? Okay, anything you were feeling, all emotions are valid. All emotions are welcome. We're not judging why they're there or if they should be there or not. But what are we feeling this morning? And once you've typed in the emotion that you're feeling, I also want you to think about your intention. Like, how did that feel? When you moved kind of to a fast forward space, even kind of like pretending that you felt that way, what was that emotion that you wanted to feel? Maybe it was like something you wanted to have gained, a thought, a feeling. Type that in also. Okay, a little anxious below the surface, jittery in my stomach. Yeah, I think that's pretty normal. Anxiety. I think that we all understand that one. We all feel that one. Jittery. Anyone else excited? Hopeful? I want to feel peaceful. Awesome. Yeah. Sometimes I like to just like pretend like, what would peaceful feel like? What do I imagine peaceful feel like? And try to bring that into my body. And another way I bring peaceful into my body is by thinking about a memory, a time recently where I felt peaceful, or a time where I felt peaceful really strongly so that I can pull that back up into my body now. Okay, tight, heavy chest improves significantly after breathing. Yeah, it's interesting how for me, breath is really powerful. Like even just standing and doing that with you, I could feel I just wanted to stay there. I was like, wait, how long can we do this for? It was just so good. Okay, anyone else? How you're feeling now, or what feeling you want to pull in, what feeling you want to call in at the end of today's session, at the end of this week? We're going to talk all about that today. While you are typing those in the chat, I'm going to start sharing my screen. You can grab your pen and your paper if you have one. And make sure that I can still see our chat. There we go. Okay. All right. So we'll do a little review of yesterday. I'll just make sure that there isn't any questions or comments. Also, you can be typing in questions and comments this whole time. I will be responding them throughout. So if it takes me a minute to get to them, it's just because I don't see it right away. Okay. It's hard to see it at the same time. Okay. So yesterday we talked about shame-based parenting. We talked about parenting in the 80s and 90s and how our parents parented us. And we're not doing it to demonize them and be like, oh, they did such a terrible job. But it's also just really important to note. It's really important to see how our childhood is actually impacting us now, because a lot of us are kind of blind to that. We're like, no, 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 I'm just fine. My childhood was fine. Have any of you guys heard that? My childhood was totally fine. Everything was great. But I want you to specifically think, this is what we talked about yesterday, how your parents responded to your negative behavior, whatever they felt like they wanted to change or that they couldn't handle or whatever, how they responded to that and how that impacted us and beliefs that we then have about ourselves or did have about ourselves in childhood. And I will offer that we also still have those below the surface right now impacting us. I often call that like that little part of ourself or that little inner child part of ourself that's still coming along for the ride, which is why we have a hard time parenting, which is why we have a hard time when we're trying to parent in a different way because it's this block. I talked about it being like a wall. So over here is the parenting we want. Over here is the parenting we're kind of stuck with that we don't really love that much. And in the center of this wall is our childhood. It's our own inner shame. It's our own little shame gremlins popping up under the surface that's making it difficult for us to hop over this wall and parent in the way that we want to. We also talked about how shame survives. It survives in secrecy, silence, and judgment. And how, if we can get into the petri dish of empathy, that's the quickest way to move it. That's the quickest way to kill it. Okay. We also talked about how everybody feels shame. If you're human, you feel shame, especially when everything around us in the 80s and 90s was a shame-based paradigm. And I don't say this to, again, to demonize just our parents. It actually popped up anytime you probably left your house. It was probably at the playground. It definitely was at school. It was at church. It was in community functions. It was activities that you went to because that was how children were responded to. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is read out loud to my kids because we homeschool. So we read a lot out loud. And I love to read these old like classic books. So I get all these classic book lists and we'd start reading them. And I literally was like shocked. I was like, what? Like the words that they would use, the way that they would respond, the way that they, every time that there was a girl showing emotion, they would either faint or it would be like, oh, you're being such a girl, or they'd just cry. Like it was just so the way that they, said girls were was so ridiculous. And every time it would talk about a boy, it would be like, don't be a girl, don't cry, don't, suck it up. Like there was these paradigms that we gave both male and females, and we also just children versus parents. And you saw it everywhere. And these are fiction books. This wasn't even like a, parenting book. This was like, that's just how the world worked. So if you were raised in the 80s, 90s before that, shame's going to be there. So I would love for anybody to share any insight for those of you that did come yesterday, or maybe that were able to tap into their shame throughout the day, yesterday or this morning. Did you have any like learning moments, any takeaways from yesterday or today so far that you want to share? I would love to read those out loud, especially to the people who weren't able to come yesterday. So just share that in the chat as well, and we'll get to that. So the quote we talked about yesterday again was, if you put shame in a petri dish, it needs three things to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. So our goal here is not to add more to your shame and be like, wow, you're doing such a bad job parenting. You're adding so much shame to your kids. Look at you. This is awful. No, because that's adding more judgment. That's adding secrecy. Well, maybe not secrecy and silence, but it's definitely adding more judgment. That is not the goal here. The goal here is to recognize our shame, because that is the thing that is going to help us empower us to do something different. One of Brené's famous quotes is to write out your story or share your story so you can write a brave new ending. And that's my goal here, is for us to write a brave new ending, not just to like say in the same story, say in the same thought patterns, not change anything, but it's to be like, wait a second, what does a brave new ending for me look like? And we can't do that unless we recognize our story. Okay. And one quick story example I'm going to share from a client last week. I shared about him yesterday, but him and his wife came to me and they have one daughter together. And she wanted him to come because I think she was like, this is a him issue. This is, these are the things I want him to work on. And what was interesting is that as we started working through things, what was interesting was what happened for her. She noticed that whenever her partner was responding in these ways that were kind of like volatile or angry or whatever, she noticed what was happening within her. She noticed her own little shame gremlins popping up. She noticed that she would be short, that she would be direct, that she would ignore, or that she would get defensive and blamey, or she would like walk away. And as she started to do this work, recognizing her own shame, recognizing what's being brought up inside of her own inner childhood stuff being brought up in the middle of an argument or conversation or inflammation of emotion with her husband, that she was then able to pause and to kind of step away and process it, either process it while she stayed in the room or walk away and go process it and come back, and support herself in the ways that she needed to. Then over time, she felt less triggered. And over time, they had less big arguments. The arguments wouldn't last as long and they wouldn't be as frequent. And that's not even in their parenting, right? That's just in their relationship with themselves. But the same thing happened in their parenting. Okay, so what is shame-free parenting? So I'm going to go to the chat here first and see your yesterday's stuff. Okay. I paid really close attention to any sensations I could feel inside. And because I was so aware of that, I ended up staying really calm. Whoa, that is awesome. Had an unusually peaceful after school experience with the kids. Okay. Also, everybody should clap for her because that's amazing, right? And isn't it interesting? Like it was such a small shift yesterday. All we talked about was just noticing what's happening inside of our body and noticing how that felt. And all you incorporated was that, just noticing how you felt inside. That's it. And anybody who has kids knows that after school time are like usually not the most calm time, right? So good for you. Eliza, I realized I use shame parenting to one child in particular, not consciously, but it just seems to happen, expecting more out of them, maybe not sure why. I need to explore this more. Curious, Eliza, if it's your oldest, because sometimes their expectations shift as kids are older, or maybe it's a kid that's not neurodiverse versus neurodiverse, because my neurodiverse kids, I have like a little less expectations of what they can handle. But it's just interesting. It's interesting to note, like in this situation, shame pops up more. The other thing you could ask yourself is like, what triggers me more about this kid? Because people around us are mirrors. So the kids that trigger us the most are shining a light on what's happening with inside us. It's like this mirror that they just go around with and we're like, oh, yep, that's in there. That's definitely been true for me and my triggering kids. Okay, Kim, last night I noticed how my shame patterns are showing up in my parenting and also saw it in my husband as he interacted with our kids. I was able to show up more present and connect in a more meaningful way with my kids before bed. It was amazing. That is amazing. I love those little connections before bed, especially before the little soft minds fall asleep, that we can like have this little peaceful connection instead of it being like short and quick and whatever. I feel like for a long time, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm calm and cool and everything's going great. And then I'm like, hey, it's been like 45 minutes now. Like, come on. That's also our shame popping up and like, why is this not working? And anyways, there's all the reasons that we'll talk about as we're talking about shame. And it's interesting to notice it show up between your partner and your kids also, right? Like you can kind of like see that dynamic playing out. And it's interesting too, just to be kind of like the observer, the neutral observer of like, what is happening there and how do my kids respond? And what do I think they believe? And how do I think they feel based on how this person responded to them? I do this a lot now when I'm out in public. I'm just kind of like noticing like a little science experiment. Okay, Eliza, I found I caught myself yesterday when I was about to say things and then stopped because of what we talked about yesterday. That is awesome. Isn't it cool that such a small little shift, like in one little session, one little moment in time? I remember you said you didn't even stay for the whole thing, right? You came a little part way through that, just that awareness, right? The S, the see the shame, it actually makes a huge difference, maybe the biggest difference. Yes, the oldest. Yeah. I just wondered that because for me, it was like as they aged, my expectations just subconsciously started increasing also. And then when those didn't match up, I was always frustrated because I was like, wait a second, like they should be here now when they shouldn't be. They weren't. He was showing me that he wasn't there yet, but I wanted him to be, and then I was frustrated. Okay, sometimes it's easier to see it in others. It really is. That's why other people are such good mirrors too, right? Because sometimes I'm like, no, nothing's wrong with me. I'm totally fine. And then I like see somebody else and I'm like, oh, well, I can see their shame popping up. And recognizing it in other people has made me more aware of it myself. I don't have this in the slides, but there's 3 ways that shame shows up for us. And I'll give you a little tidbit of that. We dig more into this in the shame-free parenting movement, which I'll talk about closer to the end. But shame pops up in 3 ways. One is people pleasing, that like fawn response of like making everybody else around me comfortable, like saying yes to everyone else when it's a no inside of me. Defensiveness, blame, anger, that kind of like outward stuff. And shutting down and withdrawing. So when those things happen, I'm like, oh yeah, shame is popping up. So that's how I notice it in other people. I notice that there's like shame happening around. And I'm like, anytime someone's defensive or blaming or aggressive, I'm like, oh, they're feeling shame. A great example of this is Facebook or Instagram. When you see like all the like really unhealthy, crazy comments, and you're like, oh, okay, they're actually all feeling triggered and they're just like throwing their shame at each other. Remember we talked about shame being like a garbage. We're like throwing our garbage at somebody else and then that person catches it and then they throw it back and then they throw it at everybody else around them. Social media is a great example of that. I also saw it when I spoke to my husband and how he felt when I said some things. Yeah. So it's noticing it like I talk about this in parenting, yes, that it came from our childhood and all of that, but it also interacts with every relationship. It interacts with us and our business, us and being on social media, us and our husbands, us and our kids, us and our sister-in-laws, us and our mother-in-laws, all the people, not even just the in-laws, the sisters too. Okay. So shame-free parenting. Let's think about that for a minute. What do we think shame-free parenting would be like? I want you to, for a moment, imagine a world in which shame is not an issue, that it's not there, that we don't feel those big, strong, activated emotions, where we don't feel this gurgling heat under the surface. Remember yesterday, so many people said that it felt like hot to them, that was like hot and bubbly, almost like lava or like something that wanted to come out like acid reflux vomit, something like that, which sounds weird, but that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. Um, Imagine a world where we parent without that. Type in some words in the chat. What would your parenting be like? Words, feelings, actions, thoughts. What would parenting be like if we could just literally wave a wand and there is no shame involved in our parenting anymore? It was people pleasing, defensiveness, and shutting down and withdrawing. So like either emotionally shutting down or physically. Good question. Okay. Okay. Shame-free parenting. What does it look like? What would you imagine if you were like, yep, shame is gone. I just blew it all away. It's no longer there. What does your parenting style look like now? Okay, clarity, responding to the situation at hand in that moment. Yeah, so just knowing like, yep, I know what to do here. It's fine, and I can respond. There's a quote that I love from Viktor Frankl. There's a pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause lies our growth and our freedom. And for me, all of this work is about building that pause, like having more of a pause between what's happening and when I respond. Okay, so clarity, responding to the situation at hand, calm. Yeah, calm. I think calm is like the one that comes up the most when I talk to people. Connected, calm, happy, joyful. Kristen, relaxed, fun. I think it would feel like the opposite of throwing garbage everywhere. It would be spreading light. What a wonderful world it could be. Oh my goodness, yes. Sometimes I imagine myself when I am just feeling good and I'm just like in the groove of just like, I love everybody in this whole world. I imagine that I have like pixie dust, like gold sparkly pixie dust, and I'm just like tossing it everywhere. And I'm like, oh, look, here's some love for you. Here's some love for you. In fact, I wanted to like order some like glitter and just like walk around for the day and just glitter things. But then I remembered that glitter is the worst to clean up. And then I was like, maybe I can find something that's not so hard to clean up. Okay. Oh, the quote. Yes, Viktor Frankl. There is a pause between stimulus and reaction. In that pause lies our growth and freedom. Yeah, that's the quote. Okay. Yes, that is exactly what shame-free parenting is, which is why, although I love parenting books and I love to have parenting authors on my podcast, and it's so fun, and I'm having a really cool one on soon. I love all of that. We actually don't need to be told what to do in a book. We need less of being told what to do because you already know what to do. You're like calm and connection and peace and just sharing my love everywhere, right? Like that is shame-free parenting. That is what we want. That's how we want to parent. I love that quote too. So good. Okay, I have shame of how I've parented my child until now. I'm getting better at being calmer and more patient. Now I see my daughter react like I used to. Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. That is why I said this process we're going through is not to add more judgment to ourselves. We can keep judging ourselves, but we also know that judgment is just going to add to more shame. In fact, when we think about think, feel, do, which we're going to do more later this week, but our thoughts create our feelings fuel our actions. If I have a thought like, this is my fault, I'm doing a terrible job, I'm not a good mom, all of those like shame-based thoughts that we have, it feels terrible in our body. There's feelings, it's going to be defensiveness, or it's going to be powerlessness, or whatever, hopelessness, shame. The way that we then act, the way that we then show up is going to be shutting down. It's going to be withdrawing. It's going to be yelling even more. It's going to be being short with people. It's going to be just all of the stuff that we don't want will happen more. And I know it feels impossible, but the way to break shame is self-compassion, acceptance, loving of the self, loving me where I'm at, loving me even though I didn't know all of this until now, loving me even though I've been trying and trying and trying and it hasn't worked, still loving me here, which is so hard. I used to say, people often, almost every time that I've worked with someone, they've been like, I wish I found you sooner. I wish I found you when my kids were little. I've worked with people with adult children, or I wish I found you when my kids were not as little as they are now. And I used to believe that for myself too. I wish I found me. I used to say that. I wish I found me 12 years ago. But I don't actually believe that anymore because there must have been something that my kids needed to learn or I needed to learn to get me to the space that I was. And also, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing if parenting was just easy. If I just like had my first baby and was like, oh, this is easy. I can parent shame-free. No, and like, no, it would be easy peasy, right? I wouldn't be able to help spread my message, spread my light, spread my help into the world if I hadn't gone through all of that. And I can so clearly see that now that I wouldn't give it away. And I believe that with everything. I am where I am on my journey in the moment in time that I need to be for a reason. The people that come into my life at the time, the teachers, the courses, the programs, the books, the podcasts, whatever it is. I just believe that it is all meant to be. And so instead of like, oh, I can see this in my parenting and I did a really terrible job and I wish that it happened sooner, I get to change that now. I remember working with a lady who had, I think, 6 kids, and she came to me when her youngest was maybe like 10 and her oldest was out of the house. And she felt the same way. She was like, I don't know. I just feel like it's too late. And guess what? It was not too late. She came because she was really struggling with her teenage daughter, and over changing her relationship with her teenage daughter, she noticed changes in even her older kids and her younger kids. In all of this shame-free stuff that we're going to talk about all week long, it helped and changed and moved through in the way that it needed to. And when I can just release that, I am where I am right now for a reason. It helps me feel so much better. Okay, all right. No worries, Kim. Okay, bye. Eliza, can we backtrack and repair harm we have caused in our relationships with children for the shame-based? Yes, for the shame-based parenting we've done in the past. Great question. So she's wondering, can we go back and repair? Absolutely. We repair by doing things differently now. We repair by them seeing things differently now. So yesterday, I don't know if you were on the call when I shared this story, but this guy that I had been working with, his daughter pointed out, oh, hey, I noticed you had an argument with my stepmom. And how did that go? How are you guys feeling now? And he said, oh, yeah, well, this is actually what he said. He said, well, I kind of responded in a way that I didn't feel good about and I kind of overreacted. And so she said, oh, so what did you do? And he said, well, I went back and I apologized. And she was like, huh, interesting. And he was like, yeah, I know. And it was just such a cute little, and his daughter is 8. It was such a cute little thing to notice that she noticed his response being different. It's like we're dancing this dance. We're always dancing the waltz. And then we start dancing the tango. And then the other person's like, wait, they're trying to dance the waltz for a bit. And then they're like, no, 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 we actually dance the tango now. You can change. You can change at any age. There is literally never any age. It does not matter if your children are adults. You can 100% change your relationship with them, which over time will repair that harm. They'll feel more safe. They'll feel more secure. They'll feel more loved. And also, if you're here, you're not a bad parent anyways. Like, you're obviously doing things to show them your love. They know that you love them deep down. Like, just because shame is coming in doesn't throw out like everything I've ever done is terrible, right? Like, that is not true. That's our shame-based brain. So part of it is realizing and accepting, like, I've actually done a lot to change. If you think about the way you parent now compared to how your parents parented, my guess is there's already a lot of shifts and changes. Probably. For me, that was true. Okay. All right, Charlene, I'm now learning this at 50 years old, hoping and praying I can now teach my daughter this. Yeah, absolutely you can. There's no age where it's like, it's too late now. Now it's not going to work. Now it's not going to be good for my kids. It will always be. Okay, I just saw this morning and added this slide. Is this good? Can you guys see it? I love this so much. Okay. I feel like this is going to be a new mantra of mine. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You'll be like, that's just the way it is. That's just the way I am. That was just the way that it was supposed to be. And nothing will change. And so us being able to recognize like this is how it's impacting us and this is what's coming up for us, and like, yes, my childhood did matter, and yes, shame is popping up and there's patterns here. That is the work. That is the work of bringing the unconscious to conscious. And there's other work that we're going to do as well, but this is the work. Okay, so we're going to talk about the harm in shame-based parenting. I'm just going to give you a couple personal examples of like how this happens to me all the time. So one would be emotions. So remember yesterday we talked about how your parents responded to, and lots of you said, my parents responded me when I had big emotions, they would like shut down, they would send me to my room, they would say I was being too emotional or too dramatic, or my emotions were too much or whatever, right? Or they just ignored me. Maybe they gave me the silent treatment. So all of that subconsciously gave us the belief emotions are bad. I'm bad as a person because I have those emotions. Those emotions are too big. I don't know how to handle them, which thus then led to a bunch of problems, right? Overeating, over drinking, pornography, scrolling social media forever. Anytime we feel bad emotions, we're like, oh, don't want to feel that. What can we do to feel better instead? We call that buffering or numbing out, something that we do instead of feeling through the feelings that we have. So it leads to all sorts of numbing out behavior. Another one, another personal example that I'll give is my son. As I was kind of like uncovering all of this a few years ago, I did my first life coaching training at a program called the Life Coach School, and it was very mindset based, and we learned a lot about thoughts, and it was great, a way to get me into this work, but there was no shame, emotion stuff. So I'm recognizing that there's like more under the surface here. And I have this one kiddo that I was like, he never listens to me. You probably heard my podcast episode about this if you listen to my podcast. But oh, I think somebody's unmuted. If you can hear yourself, unmute yourself or mute yourself, please. Okay. So what was I saying? Yes, never listened to me. At least in my mind, I was like, he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't listen. And I would get so frustrated, like really like a strong emotional activation that didn't necessarily match him just not listening to me. So this is what I did. And you can do this also. I asked myself, what about this bothers me? So the first layer there was kind of like, well, he doesn't listen and he should. And then I said, well, what about that bothers me? Like, why do I feel like he should listen? And I was like, well, kids should listen to grownups. I was like, okay, well, what about that bothers me? What's under there? If kids should listen to grown up and he's not listening to me, what about that bothers me? And then I got to the layer of, well, a good parent would have a good kid that listens to them. Okay, well, what about that bothers me? If good parents have good kids that listen to them and obey, and I don't. And then the lowest layer of that was, I must not be a good mom. I must be doing something wrong. There must be something wrong with me. That was my shame gremlin that popped up. Okay, another one. Children should be seen and not heard. And I know some of us were overtly told this, but I think that a lot of us were just like acted as if that we were overtly told this. So the opposite of that would be if we allow our kids to be seen, if we allow them to be heard, if we let them have their big feelings, that's really healthy for them. But it also can be triggering for our own inner child, right? It's like really hard. So we're like, I don't want to spew my shame out here, but also I don't know how to not. So any examples from you where you noticed that shame was kind of like popping up under the surface of your parenting and you were like, I don't really want it to, but I can tell that it's under here? Or how you can see it negatively impact the people around you, or how it negatively impacted you? As you're thinking about those and typing any in, I'll share another quick client example. I was coaching last week. I coach in a coaching program for another lady, a psychologist who works with women in anxiety. So all we talk about is anxiety pretty much all the time. And coaching this lady on her anxiety stuff. And what was popping up for her was in the evening, she would get really frustrated at her kids because they kept coming out of bed. They kept asking for things and she'd like put them back to bed and put them back to bed. And she was like, for a while, I can stay patient, I can stay calm. But over time, I would just like lose it. Like after the 1,000th time, I'm like, okay, I'm really done with this. What was actually happening was not that. In the beginning, she already wasn't necessarily feeling calm or patient. She was feeling tolerant. She was like, okay, I'm okay with this. But inside, her inner child was already a little frustrated. Her inner child was like, wait, but we weren't allowed to, come out 10 times, but we weren't allowed to do this. All of the like, how are you parenting in a different way than my inner child wants to be parented, or you was parented. How's this okay? And over time, there was actually a lot of like friction happening within her until she really did feel like she freaked out. And then she didn't like how she showed up as a mom and all of those things, was because of this friction that was inside of her about how she was parented and how she was trying to parent in that moment. And there wasn't some genuine emotion, care, compassion, empathy there for her kids, because we actually have to give it to us and our own inner child first. We have to take a moment and kind of pause and soothe our own inner child first. Okay, I'm going to go back to the chat. Okay, this is exactly how I feel with my 4-year-old currently. Yep. I'm so triggered by talking back and disrespect, and so were my parents. Yes. Oh, I love disrespect. I'm glad you brought up that word, Kinsey. Okay, disrespect. Something that triggers so many people. Were like, they're being disrespectful. And then guess what we do? 100% of the time, if my thought is my kid's being disrespectful, I disrespect them. I respond in a way that's disrespectful to them, which is then teaching them to disrespect. So it's like continuously, like, it's just this pattern that we do as parents all the time. This is probably one of the number one things people say is like, my kids disrespect me. And every time we put that through think, feel, do, the do part is always that then I respond in a way that's disrespectful, which is me teaching them disrespect. We actually teach respect by modeling respect. And so under the surface of that, right, we can dig into like, why is disrespect so triggering for me? And like, what does it mean if my kids disrespect me? What does it mean about me if my kids disrespect me? It will be super interesting. When my oldest daughter makes a big mess, I tend to give an angry silent treatment. I can feel this isn't right. Happened even yesterday. I know it hurts her. Yeah. We do that, right? And I would ask yourself the same question that I did for my like son not listening. I would be like, okay, when there's a big mess, like, why is it so triggering? What about a big mess is so triggering for me? And ask yourself several layers deep. What about that bothers me? What about that bothers me? Another question you can ask, I'm going to type this one in the chat too, so that we don't forget it, because it's going to be good, is what am I making this mean about me? That can pop us right to our shame. And we're figuring this out so that we can change, right? It's like we have a wound and we're pretending that the wound's not there. And we're just like, nope, I'm fine. And our arm's like bleeding out. And we're like, no, 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 everything's good. And we're just going about in the world. That's not going to be helpful for me. I'm going to like bleed on other people. Like, it's not going to be helpful for anyone, right? And yes, it does hurt to recognize the ways in which shame is like creeping in and being that block, that brick wall in between me and the healthy relationships that I want. But the only way to do anything about it is to recognize, is to notice. We can just be like all the other people that don't care about their shame or that say that they don't have it or whatever. Or we can be the people that are like, no, I recognize it. I see it here. And also, if I see it here, I can do something about it. Look at the examples of the beginning of the workshop of the people that already noticed changes yesterday just by recognizing the feeling in their body. When I'm parenting, I hear what my parents would be saying if they were in the room with me. I feel judged. Yes. How they would expect me to deal with the situation makes me have higher expectations than I actually have and makes me feel bad about my parenting. Yes. And then we parent even worse, right? And then we're just like, that's when we yell, or that's when we use shame in our parenting because we're like, they're judging us. One secret hint about that one is that whatever we think other people are thinking about us, like if I imagine my parents in the room and they're judging me, all of those thoughts, I write all of those down. And you'll recognize that all of those thoughts are actually thoughts you have about yourself. Even if your parents didn't believe any of that, those are thoughts that you believe about yourself currently. Those are your own shame gremlin, shame-based thoughts. And those are the ones we want to work on. And the first way to work on it is yesterday, that S, the see the shame, like notice how I feel in my body when I'm feeling it, like recognize it popping up. And we'll dig into the rest of them throughout the week. Same, kids not listening unless we threaten no TV, which I hate doing, said I'd never do, which proves in my mind that I'm a bad mom, which makes me feel horrible shame. Yeah, it's like I said I was never going to do this, and then I became this person. Okay, so this is I said I never do this. My parents aren't on this call, so I can say this. They might actually watch the recording. It's okay. They love me anyways. But my dad was pretty impatient. My mom was a little bit too, but my dad was like more of the angry, triggered one, at least in that response. And so I had always told myself, I'm only going to marry somebody that's like really calm and really chill and never yells. Also, I did. I married that person. Also, shame can come when you're not even yelling, by the way. Like sometimes I'm like, you're yelling at me. And he's like, no, I'm clearly not yelling. And I'm like, it's in your tone. It's in your energy. I can feel when it's coming at me. Um, anyways, skip fast forward, have my own kids, realize I am my dad. That's even worse. I'm like, wait a second. I am the one who's responding in this way. Like, what is happening? And how much shame I then felt because I was like, I already said I was never going to do this. Now I'm the one doing this, adding to more shame, adding to more shame, adding to more shame. So even though I was reading parenting books, in fact, the very first parenting book that got me into like attachment and connection was Hold On to Your Kids by Dr. Gordon Neufeld, which is great. And I read it when my kids were really small, like 2 and 4. And like my oldest is like 17 now. And it gave me more shame because then I was like, well, I have this really high standard now of how I want my parenting to be. And now I can recognize that I'm like nowhere near that. And so then for like the next decade, I just felt like full of shame. And I don't feel like anything changed. I don't feel like I was able to parent in the way that I was being taught. I even went to courses. I actually met him in person. I trained all these things. It didn't seem to matter how much effort and time I put there. It didn't actually help because I wasn't addressing my own childhood stuff. Ashley, my son said to me yesterday that he is this way because of us as his parents, because we taught him everything he knows. Oh, shame punch to the stomach. Oh, he's like, I'm this way because of you. And you're like, oh, you're right. Like, oh, I feel so bad. But the cool thing is, you guys, like, I know this all feels sad and this all feels hard, and it is for sure. Like 100% validation to that. I know how that feels. It also shows us the power that we have. It also shows us that we must have equal power for good. It also shows us that if we can make those changes, look at the power that we have in shifting things, in responding to them in a different way. And again, it's not perfect parenting that we're going for, right? I talked about that yesterday. Okay, Kristen, so I'm just thinking through all of this moment when you said shame shows up in shutting down and withdrawing. That is a big one for me in so many areas of my life. I do that in parenting and other relationships, things that trigger me with my kids, like messes, not getting things done. It bothers me so much, but I just withdraw or shut down. Then I feel a lot of shame about my kids not being motivated with some things or helping. I believe it's all my fault. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because we're like, well, I'm not a yeller, so I get that. But we're like, wait, I'm a shutting downer. Like there is still shame happening under the surface, and then we see it perpetuated in our kids. And the only way that we can move through shame is empathy and compassion and love and acceptance, but not for the people around us yet. Actually, for us, for little inner us that didn't know a way that was different, that was raised in this petri dish of shame. We didn't know. We had no idea. We are where we are because we are a product of our mood, our personality, our background, the things that happened to us, the things that people said around us. We are a product of all of that up until this point in time now. And we can either stay here and just be like, whew, well, that sucks. I guess I'm going to stay in secrecy, silence, and judgment and just keep adding to my shame. Or we can do it a different way. We can pour in a huge amount of empathy, a huge amount of understanding for ourselves, of compassion for who we are. I think that we get to choose how we're going to go forward with that. Charlene, I've been a lot calmer with my parenting my daughter, but she still has huge emotions like yelling and slamming doors. I feel horrible for not showing her how to deal with what to do or big emotions. Yeah, because we probably don't know what to do with our big emotions, right? We're like, well, I don't know. How do I handle big emotions? How am I supposed to help her through big emotions if I am not handling my own big emotions? If my inner child's freaking out and is like, wait, they're not allowed to act that way. Maybe I'm just like, well, I don't know how to respond to them because my inner child's freaking out like that. And so maybe I just kind of ignore it. Shame-free parenting is going to still be boundaries. It's going to still be teaching. It's going to still be guidance. But most of what's going to be taught is through us modeling that behavior to them. It's not actually what we say. Even in the moment when they're feeling the big emotions, in fact, it's not what we say at all. Co-regulation, which is this process of like my emotions and their emotions and us being able to kind of meld together and me help calm them, isn't like me telling her that not to slam her door, and isn't me telling her to do box breathing or even the breathing that we did today. It is me calming my energy. It is my energy speaking to the room. It is my energy speaking to my home. It is my energy that's moving from me without even saying a word. So when my inner child's freaking out in those moments, the number one thing I can do is tend to me first. Even if she's screaming, I've done this when my daughter's screaming before. I'm like, put my hand on my chest and I do my own slow, deep breathing. And I'm like, ooh, what's coming up for me? What's happening for me inside? Like we did yesterday. Describe that feeling for me. Okay. So there's something else at play here. It's shame. That's the reason why it's hard for us. That's the reason why we have big emotions. That's the reason why compassion feels like it's sucking our energy, because it wasn't really real compassion in the first place. It was just us trying to fake what we think compassion probably is. It builds over time. It builds into that volcano. Then when we lose it and we don't respond in ways that we like to, whether that's shutting down for you or whether that's aggressive defensive behavior. We set up kids for success when we do our own inner work. Shame-free parenting is their best chance at success, and that happens through our work, through our inner work. Okay, you're welcome, Charlene. I'm glad. I really, really don't want to add more to your shame. I want to show you that the more that we recognize our shame, that we notice that it's there, that we notice it's the driving force behind our behavior, that we notice it's what we've been calling fate all along, that's how we change it. Okay, so get out your pen and paper. Grab out your pen and paper. And we're going to do 60 seconds thought dump, all the thoughts that I have in my brain on paper. How would you like to parent? If anything was possible, I waved a magic wand and your parenting was now changed. It was shifted. How do you want to parent? 60 seconds, write that down. As you're writing that down, maybe you're finished. Perfectionism should not be our goal, because perfectionism and shame are two sides of the same coin. Anywhere there's perfectionism, I know there's shame. In myself, in other people, perfectionism and shame are the same thing. So we're not going for perfectionism. We're going for good enoughism, because we're human. Humans make mistakes. We know that. If you know any human, you know that that's true. If you've read human history, you know that that's true. Humans make mistakes. It's part of being human. It's part of the whole gig of being here. Accepting that we're human and that we're going to make mistakes is part of it. And also that is how we model how our kids can have shame resiliency. That is how we model how we show our kids how to respond to their own shame gremlins that they inevitably have. And even if they're not getting it from us in our home, they're probably going to get it in other places. And so we are going to want to show them how to move through their shame, how to move through the mistakes that they make, not make it mean anything about themselves, love themselves anyways. We can't do that if we're modeling perfectionism. So if there was anything in your little notes that you just wrote that was like, I will never, ever do this again, and I will always be kind and always be loving, like the very ultimatums, you can cross those ones out. But how would you like to parent? Awesome. If you have anything you want to share in the chat about how you want to parent, type that in there. Anything that pops up, however you'd like to parent. And I will also say that it's possible. When I read these books, I knew exactly how I wanted to parent. I was like, I want to be calm. I want to be connected. I want to have a good, healthy relationship with them. I want to model all of the things that I want to see in them. I wasn't doing that at the time because I was feeling so much shame. And I was parenting this kid that was neurodiverse. I have a few kids that are neurodiverse. And so his behaviors at the age that he was at were quite extreme. And they tended to be, I'll just say, very extreme. You can listen to more of my story in my episode 1, 2, and 3 of my Parenting Coach podcast. But with the extremeness of that and the difficulty it led to parenting, I would just freak out. I would just feel so triggered. And I didn't know how to respond at all. And over time, all I did was just pause, and I would just like leave the room when I was feeling triggered. And that's all I did. I did nothing except that for at least 3 months. After about 3 months, I started just taking little moments of like when I was feeling calm to try to connect, do something one-on-one with him, talk to him, whatever. Those are the only 2 things I did to change at all over the course of that year. This is before I found life coaching and before I even knew what shame was all about. Those are the only 2 things I did. Over the course of the year, my kiddos' meltdowns decreased by 90% in intensity and frequency, maybe even more. It would, instead of it being every day for hours every day, it got to like every other day, and then every third day, and then every fourth day, and then eventually every week. And then eventually I realized it was happening once a month. And instead of 2 or 3 hours, it would be 20 or 30 minutes. And I was like, wait, what? All I didn't even do this whole shame process because I didn't even know what I was doing. So it was slow. It was a slow growth thing for sure, but huge changes in them as well. Okay. Um, yes, exactly what you just said. Okay. Anybody else? Any parenting, what you want your parenting to be? I want to help them learn to modify their own perspectives and learn to work through their emotions in healthy ways. Yeah. Yeah. To like listen, to take things in, to be a learner, to be like, yeah, okay, this is what I think about this. Oh, let's think critically about this. Okay. And how do I feel my feelings and respond to them in healthy ways? Okay, Eliza, so I'm just processing all of this. Is the end goal to become all the time, never overreact, teach your children to not withdraw, not just have no emotion unless it's happy, go lucky? Because this feels boring and blah in a way. I've always thought it's healthy to feel all the feelings and be angry if we need to. So shame-free parenting, still showing emotions, but not casting shame as a way to parent. Is that making sense? That is making sense. And yes, it is, like I said, it's not perfectionism at the end. I say like 80%. So like 80% of the time, I'm going to respond in a way that feels connected, that feels shame-free, that feels loving, that feels calm. The other 20% of the time, I'm probably really not going to. Like I'm going to respond in ways that are not necessarily healthy. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to repair and I'm going to reconnect and I'm going to show how to move through shame by moving through my own shame. But that 80% even is also, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel all of my feelings. It's okay for my kids to feel all their feelings. It is literally anything but blah. Like welcoming in the whole human experience and everything that is what it means to be human is like the most colorful life that it could be. And it's not toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is I am happy and calm all of the time and everything is good. And we only talk about happy things. That is not that. I often give this analogy of like a fridge. We have this fridge and there's two drawers. And in the one drawer, we have like this beautiful produce that's like lemons and it's fresh and it like smells good and everything looks lovely. And we love to open up that drawer and be like, look how clean that drawer is. And then we have this other drawer that's like rotting and we have like this cucumber that's been in there for 3 weeks and like asparagus is wilting and like the carrots are moldy and there's like some strawberries in there that are moldy. And we're like, we do not like looking in that drawer. Like, let's push that closed. That is toxic positivity. We have both drawers. We all have both drawers. About half the time we're going to be in one drawer, about half the time we're going to be in the other drawer. And if we are just not even recognizing that there is this other drawer under the surface, that there's all these emotions, then it's not going to be healthy for us or anybody else. Okay. What is your role? Actually, I'm going to get to that tomorrow because I want to have some time to do this analogy in a good way. Okay. So we'll get to the personalization and differentiation thing later, but I really wanted to get clear on what we wanted our parenting to be like. And I want you to continuously think about that, what I want my parenting to be like over the course of the evening, because we're going to work on that tomorrow, writing down what really matters to us. So parenting is an inside job. It's the work that we do on the inside. And did I answer your question, Eliza? Did that make sense to you? Parenting is on the inside. So the H for today is hone in. What do I actually want? What matters most? Where is my power? We're actually going to talk about that one tomorrow. So that will make more sense tomorrow, the where is my power part. But we're just going to really hone into like what actually matters. Because in the moment when I'm feeling that like anger or shame or frustration, it feels like I need to get my point across. I need to teach this right now. But if what really matters is what you just wrote down, calm, love, connection, modeling, all those emotions. Okay, good. Connecting. I want to connect more with my daughter and her to trust me with anything, have more enjoyable times with her. I want to feel like they're loved no matter what, how they feel inside and able to show their whole selves. Oh, these are so beautiful. That is what matters most. So H, hone in, is that. Remember that. In the moment, we're going to notice our shame like we did yesterday, right? We're going to feel it in our bodies. We're going to describe it to ourselves in our bodies. If you didn't watch the replay, go watch the replay on that. And then H, hone in. We're going to really hone into what actually matters. How do I actually want to parent? Okay, so we're going to talk about that again tomorrow, but that's what we're going to do. Okay, if you put shame in a petri dish, remember we talked about this one, it needs 3 things to grow: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame in a petri dish, and douse it with empathy, it can't survive. So we can decide just to stay with our secrecy and our silence and our judgment, or we can decide there is a different way. And the different way is welcoming all of our human emotions. It's welcoming all of our messiness. It's welcoming that I don't always know what to do. It's welcoming that I respond in ways that I don't want to. It's welcoming that I have shame that's popping in my parenting still. And it's welcoming the whole human thing. And the more that I can do that, you will notice that your shame moments get less frequent and you also get less triggered. Going back to that quote I shared before from Viktor Frankl, the pause between the stimulus and the reaction, the pause will increase. We will have more of a pause. Okay, type your questions in the chat. If you have any questions about that, type that in the chat. I also want to share that this is a movement. This is like a wave. This is like, I feel like Brene Brown started this. So she had this TED Talk years ago, and she wasn't expecting it to be very popular. Like only a few people watched it, and like eventually got to like 30,000 views. And she's like, oh, it's kind of a lot of people. And then it kept building and building until it was millions of views. And I think it's either the top 1 or 2 or 3 watched TED Talks in the world of all time now. And it was on shame and it was on vulnerability. And she was like, who wants to talk about shame? I don't know. Like she did not expect it to be so wildly popular. And there was a lot of like negative, wildly popular stuff, like negative comments on there, but there was a lot of goodness that she started. And I think she started this movement, she started this wave, and I see it changing. I see people recognizing they know how to define shame. They know what it's like. They know what it feels like in their body. They recognize that it's popping up for them and they don't want it anymore. And that is why I started the Shame-Free Parenting Movement, which is my new group program that is the Petri dish. That is the Petri dish that we get to be in so that we can share our empathy with each other. Because guaranteed, if I sit here and I listen to your story, I will immediately have empathy for you. I would be like, of course you're like that. Of course this is happening. Of course, of course, of course. And I love you. That is the emotion, that's the energy that we want to have for ourselves. And being in a Petri dish with other people that so clearly mirror that back to us is life-changing. So join us. Here's some examples of people that I've worked through this kind of work with to show you that it can happen for you too. Even if you just listen to my podcast. So see if that one on the bottom right, it says, I wanted to share, I've been listening to your podcast. I made it to season 2, episode 12. I have a lot of episodes. There's like 177 or something. I feel that things have been shifting from a short time, and listen to the shift that she says. Just simple hacks around changing my thinking has been amazing. Growing up in an authoritarian home has left me with deep set feelings that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. The tools you provide help loosen those thoughts and feelings. That's even just from listening to the podcast that she started to see those shifts, not even from doing any work one-on-one with me. You're helping me a better mom and have a happier home. I value you so much. That's a lady that reached out to me on Instagram from what I share on Instagram and again on the podcast, that not even somebody that I actually worked with one-on-one. These other 2 were for one-on-one people. So this philosophy has been so amazing. I've made small changes about how I spend my time, what I really want to do. I've had a lot of great moments with my kids. It feels miraculous. I hear that word miracle often. This feels like a miracle. I never thought it would change. Even just think about yesterday, how you changed yesterday, the small little moments that changed yesterday, just from like one little shift, just from one little, like, how does this feel in my body? How can I recognize my shame? This is another client that I worked with that went through a similar group program with me. And she said, I haven't yelled in 18 days. It feels like such a blessing doing this work. I remember asking how long it would take when she was like, I don't know if I should join or not. How long do you think this is going to take? I want to change like right away, really not knowing what it was that I was even looking for, but I'm proud of showing up. I'm really showing up the way I'm proud of. Even when I'm misaligned, I treat myself kindly. That is the goal. Even when I'm misaligned, I treat myself kindly. That is how we shift shame. We don't shift shame for there being like, let me see if I can be compassionate for my kids or for my husband or for this other person right now. It is first us, even when we are responding in ways that we do not feel good about. And this is really difficult. This is really, really hard to do. It like is a simple answer, but it's really difficult. Okay, so this is the details of the program. It's a group program because in a Petri dish with more of us, more love, more empathy, it will grow even more. And because sometimes you don't even notice how shame is affecting you and you see somebody else get coached on it and you're like, oh yeah, that is exactly how I think and feel. That even happened today, right? In the comments, you were like, yes, exactly what you just said. We see that in other people and it's easier to see in us. Our call is going to be on Mondays, hopefully, time TBA, depending on the time zones that join us. We will have 8 weekly calls, group coaching calls. We'll also do a little bit of teaching in that, but mostly it's going to be coaching. Subconscious reprogramming. If we don't make the unconscious conscious, then we can't make changes, right? So the subconscious reprogramming are all 100% subconscious work. We will always have subconscious work in our group calls as well because it's just so effective. But in these calls, 100% that. It'll either be hypnosis or hypnotherapy or breath work or some sort of guided meditation visualization process to get into our body in a subconscious way that's the below the surface work that needs to be done to actually change the neural patterns, why you're triggered, and change those triggers and move through that pattern. Those will be 90 minutes and they will likely be on Thursdays. But again, that will depend on the group and what works for everyone. We will also have a community where you can ask questions throughout the week, keep up with the work that we're going to be doing because we'll have work every week. And I'll send some journaling prompts or any extras that'll be posted there as well. We're going to start next Monday, October 7th. And we're also going to have 3 dad calls, which is so awesome because yes, dads also want to do this work. They might not be able to verbalize the shame as much. Maybe they don't know as much about it because maybe they don't just read self-help books for fun like we do. I don't know. But for sure they can get there. And I've had some really amazing dad calls and really amazing dads that I have worked with. And I love being able to feel like I'm more on the same page with things and have the same language and the same verbalization of like, this is what's happening for me. In fact, my mom is a therapist and she was mentioning that the thing that makes marriage therapy work the most, like the most effective form of marriage therapy, isn't necessarily the modality or the style of marriage therapy, but it's you having the same therapist because you have the same language, because you have the same things going on. That doesn't mean going to meet together with your therapist, by the way. I think oftentimes it's better separate. But it is really helpful to have that same language. You get this all for $9.97, which is the lowest price I've ever offered this kind of program in the past. And this one will be the best program because I have never done so much shame work and had this be intentionally our focus. There's payment plans available. There always is. There's some up level options. So if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be willing to open up because I just like don't know these people, that's okay. You can book some one-on-one calls. Also, it's easier to open up than you think that it would. Like if anyone's been to my retreats before, they're like, I don't know if I'll open up. And in like 5 minutes, they're like, here's my entire life story. So it does feel a lot more comfortable than you think it's going to for sure. But if you're like, I don't know, there's some things I really want to talk about one-on-one, you can get discounted sessions. So $400 will give you 2 sessions. Typically that would be $500 for 2 sessions. So they're a little bit discounted there. And if you think you might need more, if you're like, I want to go all in on this, but I really am feeling like I need more guidance than that and I need more handholding than that, then you can have a coach in your pocket Monday through Friday through Voxer. It's going to be a group Voxer, which is like a walkie-talkie app. And I respond within 24 hours to all of your coaching questions, usually even less than 24 hours, Monday through Friday. And that's an extra $14.97 if you want that. Okay. And because I think that shame work is so powerful and will work so well, I will give you a 7-day money back guarantee. That means if you come in and you're doing the work and you're doing the homework and you're like, nope, this isn't for me. Even if you're like, I just don't want to work on my shame right now, like maybe later. Or if you're just like, I don't know if this is the best modality for me, or maybe I want to go do something else or whatever. I'm not even going to question it. You just let me know. You can have a 7-day money back guarantee because this work is so powerful. So join the Shame-Free Parenting movement starting next Monday. Here's a QR code. So you can scan that QR code. You can also go to coachcrystal.ca/group. You can ask me any questions. You can sign up already. There will be more information later, but we will have our first call next Monday night. I need to be able to rewatch this for weeks, maybe longer. It's only available till Sunday night because I can't just keep it forever and ever. I have to shift it to this group space. But for those of you that join the group, the replays of this will be available on our little portal that we'll make. So anybody that wants to come join us. I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to go to my chat. How are we feeling now? Type in the chat, emotion word. What is coming up for you now? How are you feeling? You can close your eyes. You can tap in if you want. What feelings are coming up for you? If you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to say, if you're like, no, shame is not my problem, you can tell me that too. Okay. Hopeful. Yeah. That is what I wanted. Hopeful is what I wanted because if I have hope, then I believe it's possible to change. If I'm just like, okay, yeah, I leave the session and I'm like, shame is the problem and I have no idea what to do about it, then it's not as effective, right? But remember, see the shame, recognize the feeling of shame in my body. Just doing that was so powerful yesterday, and hone in. You take a moment in those moments when you're noticing your shame to hone in on what did I want my parenting to be like? And some of you said like I want to be a safe space for my kids to be seen and heard and loved and valued. Just recognize yourself. Recognize that. Remember that. Remind yourself of that. More knowledgeable and excited. Yeah. I think this work is exciting. In fact, if you're really weird like me and you get to the other side of shame where you're much less frequently triggered and much less intensely triggered, but for sure my shame thoughts pop up just in different areas of my life, not parenting anymore. Um, I actually get excited. Isn't it weird? I get excited. I'm like, oh, I got triggered. Ooh, didn't know that that was going to happen in that situation with that person. Like, what's happening there? I just moved to this new town and I had an interaction with somebody a few weeks ago that I thought went terribly. And I was like, ah, and for like days, like I didn't even want to like watch any of their things on social media. And I was just like, I felt so shame gremlin-y. And it pops up still. It's still going to pop up, but I knew what to do. I was like, oh, okay. What's happening under the surface? Okay, I'm making this mean that like she's really cool and I'm not. And she is really awesome and she doesn't want to be friends with me. Like all of this under the surface stuff that was popping up. And then I just like sat with it. And I just sat with myself and I just moved through myself. It even feels shame gremlin-y to like verbalize that that's happened to me, but that happens to me all the time. And now I try to shift it into this excitement of like, I get to do this work. I'm excited that there's more work for me to do. That shame is popping up in all these areas. It pops up in my business, for sure on social media. When I'm like, let me share this story on social media, and then people say mean comments and stuff, which hasn't happened a lot to me, but a few times it has. I'm like, oh, yep, there's more shame gremlins there that I haven't recognized. So we get to decide what we're going to do with this work. We get to decide if we're just going to stay in our shame and just be like, nope, not going to see it, pretend that it's not there, or if we're going to do something about it. And if you are feeling called to join this movement with me, um, as a vulnerable, open guide doing this work alongside you, where we can like co-create this beautiful petri dish, join me there. Social media is challenging. Whew, it is. Yeah, I feel ya. But again, for me now, I'm like excited because I'm like excited and also not excited. I'm like, oh, that feels terrible, but also like, oh, okay, there's something there. There's something there that I can work on, that I can see, that I can use as a mirror to figure out what's happening within me. Um, okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here today. If there's any other like emotions, feelings, thoughts, questions, you want to type them in the chat. And if not, I will see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. The replay will be available on the replay page like yesterday's was. If you missed that, that will be there. Thank you. Thanks for coming, Kristen, Kinsey. So good to see all of you. Okay, bring your friends if anybody wants to join. We are still open to join, and these replays will be available on that page so people can still be joining all the way throughout the week. And go check out the Shame-Free Parenting Movement. I think I said more about it today on the call than I did on the actual page. So you have all the information I have right now. You're so welcome. Thanks for coming, Eliza. So come join us. Thanks for coming, and we will see you tomorrow.